Commander Do-hyun Park stood at the bridge of his ship, the EDF Sentinel, watching the stars through the large observation window. His dark uniform fit perfectly, showing his strong build. The gold badge of the Earth Defense Force shined on his chest. He had been in space for 15 years, but the sight of stars still made him feel peaceful. "Commander, all systems are working well," said Lieutenant Jia Lee from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel, checking all the ship's functions. "The new engine updates are performing better than expected." Do-hyun nodded, pleased with the report. The Sentinel was one of Earth's best patrol ships, keeping watch over the busy space lanes between Earth and the colony on Proxima Centauri. These routes were important. They carried supplies, settlers, and trade goods between the world's humans now called home. "Any word from the Morning Star?" Do-hyun asked, thinking about the passenger ship that carried his sister Hae-yun and her children. They were moving to the colony for Hae-yun's new job as a teacher. "Yes, sir. They reported in 10 minutes ago. Everything is fine. They should reach Proxima Colony in about 6 hours," Jai-A answered, knowing how much the commander cared about his family. The bridge was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines and the low hum of the engine. 6 other crew members worked at their stations, each focused on their tasks. The Sentinel was not a big ship, but it was fast and had good weapons, perfect for keeping the peace in human space. "Commander," the sharp voice of Sensor Officer Min-ho Kang cut through the quiet. "I'm picking up something strange. There's an energy reading I've never seen before." Do-hyun walked to Min-ho's station, looking at the screen. The sensor display showed something unusual, a patch of space that seemed to bend light around it. Could it be a sensor problem? Do-hyun asked, but he already knew the answer. Min-ho was too good at his job to make simple mistakes. "No, sir. I've checked 3 times. Something's out there, and it's big." Before Do-hyun could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. A massive ship appeared, its surface looking like polished crystal. It sparkled in the starlight, beautiful but terrifying. The ship was almost twice the size of the Sentinel. "Battle stations," Do-hyun ordered, his voice calm but firm. Red lights flashed across the bridge as crew members rushed to prepare for possible combat. "Send a message to Earth Defense Command. Unknown ship has appeared near Patrol Route Alpha 7. "Sir, the ship is. It's glowing," GA reported, her eyes wide with surprise. The crystal ship began to pulse with bright lights that moved across its surface like waves. Do-hyun had never seen anything like it. The lights formed patterns that seemed almost like writing. "They might be trying to communicate," Do-hyun said. "Open all standard communication channels." "Channels open, sir," Communications Officer Young Soo-ba confirmed, broadcasting standard greetings in all known languages. For a moment, nothing happened. Then more crystal ships appeared, popping into space like soap bubbles forming in the air. 5, then 10, then 20 ships surrounded them. "Sir, I'm detecting energy buildup in the alien ships," Min-ho reported, his voice tense. "There." The first blast cut through space, like a laser made of pure light. It missed the Sentinel by meters, the heat of it making the ship's shields flare bright blue. "Return fire," Do-hyun ordered. "Target the nearest ship. Send an emergency signal to all nearby vessels. We are under attack." The Sentinel's weapons fired, shooting powerful energy beams at the crystal ship. The beams hit directly, but seemed to pass through the crystalline hull without causing damage. "Our weapons aren't working," Weapons Officer Hai-jin Choi shouted. "The energy is being absorbed or reflected." Do-hyun's mind raced. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and their weapons were useless. But his first duty was to warn others. "Maximum power to communications," he ordered. "Send all sensor data about these ships to Earth Defense Command. They need to know what they're dealing with." More light beams cut through space. The Sentinel dodged most of them, the ship moving like a dancer through the deadly light show. but they couldn't dodge forever. Sir, 2 civilian ships just came out of faster-than-light travel. Minho's voice was filled with horror. It's the Morning Star and the New Dawn. Do-hyun's heart stopped for a moment. His sister's ship had arrived right in the middle of a battle. Get me a channel to those ships now. Channel open. Morning Star, New Dawn. This is Commander Park. Turn back immediately. You are entering a combat zone. I repeat. A beam of light brighter than any before split space in two. It hit the Morning Star directly in its middle section. The passenger ship, designed for comfort and not combat, had no chance. It broke apart in a silent explosion, pieces of it spreading out like fallen leaves in space. No! Do-hyun's scream echoed across the bridge. 2,000 people had been on that ship. His sister, his niece and nephew, gone in an instant. The New Dawn tried to turn around, its engines glowing bright, as it attempted to escape. But another light beam caught it, turning the ship into a cloud of debris. Sir, more ships are appearing. GA reported, her voice shaking. They're attacking all across the sector. Do-hyun stood straight, his hands gripping the command rail so hard his knuckles turned white. Grief tried to overwhelm him, but years of training took over. Plot an escape course, he ordered, his voice steady despite the pain in his heart. We have to warn Earth. They have to know what's coming. The Sentinel turned sharply, its engines pushing to maximum power. Light beams followed them, some getting close enough to make the shields scream in protest. Send everything we have, Do-hyun commanded. All sensor data, all combat footage. The defense of Earth depends on this information. As they ran, more crystal ships appeared behind them. The Sentinel's computer counted 40 ships now, then 60. An invasion fleet appearing from nowhere to attack humanity without warning or reason. Transmission complete, Young-soo announced. Earth Defense Command has received our data. A light beam finally caught the Sentinel's rear section. Alarms screamed across the bridge as systems began to fail. Engine power dropping. GA reported. We can't maintain this speed. Do-hyun looked at his crew, seeing the fear in their eyes, but also their determination. It has been an honor serving with you all, he said. Then he pressed the button that would seal this section of the ship. Lieutenant GI, get everyone to the escape pods. Sir, you have to come too. GA protested. Someone has to make sure the pods get away. Do-hyun said calmly. I'll hold them off as long as I can. That's an order, Lieutenant. GA stood straight and saluted, tears in her eyes. Then she began directing the crew to the escape section. Do-hyun turned back to his controls. He could see the crystal ships getting closer. Their light patterns seemed almost happy now, like they were celebrating their victory. They didn't understand, Do-hyun thought, as he turned his dying ship to face them. They didn't understand what they had just done. Humans weren't like other species they might have conquered. Humans remembered. Humans learned. And most importantly, humans didn't accept defeat. Escape pods launched, the computer announced. Do-hyun watched the small pods speed away from his ship, carrying his crew to safety. Then he aimed the Sentinel at the nearest crystal ship. For Hae-yun, he whispered, and pushed the engines to overload. The Sentinel's last moments were bright enough to blind sensors for several minutes. The explosion damaged 3 crystal ships and scattered the others, giving the escape pods the chance they needed to get away. Hours later, when Earth Defense Command received the full report of what had happened, they understood they were at war. But it would be a war unlike any humanity had fought before, because this time, they weren't fighting for land or resources or power. They were fighting for vengeance, for justice, for the innocent lives lost in an attack that came without warning or reason. And humanity, when pushed to fight for such things, was capable of becoming the most dangerous force in the galaxy. In his last moments, Do-hyun had proven something important. Even a dying ship could hurt these invaders if you knew how to use it. It was the first lesson humanity would learn about fighting the Velari. It would not be the last. The war had begun, and humanity's wrath would echo across the stars. Captain Sun Mei-Kang hadn't left her laboratory on Mars for 3 days. Dark circles showed under her eyes as she studied the crystal shard through her microscope. The piece had come from a damaged Valari ship, recovered by a brave rescue team after the first attacks. It was beautiful, catching the light and breaking it into rainbow patterns across her desk. "Play sensor recording 47 again," she said to her computer. The screen showed the attack on the Morning Star one more time. Sun Mei forced herself to watch as the light beam destroyed the ship. She had lost friends on that vessel, but their deaths would not be meaningless. She would find a way to fight back. "Stop," she commanded. "Show me the light patterns on the Valari ship just before it fired." The computer zoomed in on the crystal ship's surface. Waves of light moved across it in complex patterns. Sun Mai leaned closer, her tired eyes suddenly wide with interest. "Those patterns, they're not random," she whispered. "Computer, compare these light waves to neural activity patterns in the crystal sample." Numbers and graphs filled her screen. Sun Mei's hands shook as she read the results. "They're the same. The light patterns are their thoughts." She grabbed her phone and called Admiral Taiwan Choi immediately. "Admiral, I need to see you right away," she said when he answered. "I think I've found their weakness." 2 hours later, Sun Mei stood in the Mars Command Center. Admiral Taiwan sat behind his desk, his face serious as he listened. Major Yoon-ji Kim of Special Operations stood nearby, her sharp eyes focused on the crystal sample Sun Mei had brought. "The Valari aren't just using crystal ships," Sun Mei explained. "They are crystal. Their whole biology is based on light and crystal structures. They think through light patterns, like our brains use electricity." "How does this help us fight them?" Yoon-ji asked, picking up the crystal to examine it. "Every crystal has a resonance frequency, a specific pattern of vibration that can shatter it," Sun Mei said. "But the Valari crystals are special. They don't just break when you hit the right frequency. Their thought patterns get scrambled." Admiral Taiwan leaned forward. "You're saying we can hurt them with sound?" "Not exactly sound. We need quantum resonators, devices that can create specific energy patterns. The right pattern will disrupt their ability to think and communicate. It won't kill them, but it will confuse them completely." "How long to build these resonators?" the Admiral asked. "We already have the technology. We use quantum resonators in our faster-than-light engines. We just need to adjust them to the right frequency." Yoon-ji smiled for the first time. "And if we could plant these devices near their ships?" "Exactly," Sun Mei nodded. "But we need to test it first, and we need to get close to their ships without them noticing." Admiral Taiwan stood up and walked to the window. The dome of Mars colony spread out below them. Humanity's first successful settlement on another planet. "Major Yoon-ji, I'm giving you command of this operation. Choose your best teams. We need to capture a Valari ship for testing." Yoon-ji's smile grew wider. "I know just the people for this job." Over the next week, special operations teams trained while Sun Mei and her science team built the first weapon prototypes. They called them Star Shatterers, small devices that looked like simple engine parts. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would use debris from destroyed human ships as cover. Special operations soldiers in spacesuits would hide among the broken pieces, waiting for Valari ships to pass by. The aliens had a habit of examining the wreckage they created, almost like they were studying their victories. "Remember," Yoon-ji told her teams, "we only need one ship. Make it count." They set their trap in the Proxima Centauri system, where the first attacks had happened. Pieces of the Morning Star still floated there, a grave marker in space. Yoon-ji's teams hid among the debris, their suits powered down to avoid detection. They waited for 2 days. Some soldiers told later that they could see light patterns moving through space, Valari ships passing in the distance, but they had to wait for one to come close enough. Finally, their patience paid off. A crystal ship approached the debris field, its surface glowing with curious light patterns. It was smaller than the others they had seen, maybe a scout or research vessel. Yoon-ji gave the signal. 20 soldiers activated their suit thrusters at the same time, pushing off from their hiding places. They looked like more pieces of debris, floating naturally in space. The Valkyrie ship didn't react. When they were close enough, Yoon-ji sent the second signal. The soldiers attached themselves to the crystal hull using special magnetic clamps. Each one placed a star shatterer device against the surface. Devices planted, Yoon-ji whispered into her radio. Everyone back away. As the soldiers pushed off from the ship, Sun-Mi sat in her laboratory on Mars, watching through telescopes and sensors. Her finger hovered over the button that would activate the devices. "May the stars forgive us," she said softly, and pressed the button. The effect was immediate and amazing. The light patterns on the ship went crazy, flashing in random colors and shapes. The ship spun in space, moving like a drunk person trying to walk straight. "It's working," Sun-Mi shouted. Their thought patterns are completely disrupted. Special operations ships that had been hiding nearby moved in quickly. They attached towing cables to the confused Valkyrie vessel and pulled it away at high speed. When they got the ship to a secure location, they found something unexpected. The Valkyrie crew was still alive, but they couldn't think properly. Their light patterns were dim and jumbled, like a radio playing static instead of music. "We did it," Sun-Mi said, studying the captured aliens. "We found a way to fight them without killing them." But Admiral Ta-1 was thinking bigger. "How many of these devices can you make?" he asked. "With Earth's factories helping. Thousands, maybe millions." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Then it's time for Phase 2. Major Yoon-ji, I want your teams to start planting these devices on every Valkyrie ship you can reach. Hide them in debris, in asteroids, anywhere they won't be noticed. Like hiding landmines in space," Yoon-ji said. "Exactly. But we don't activate them yet. We wait until we can hit them all at once." Sun-Mi looked at the confused Valkyrie in their containment chamber. "Sir, this will be more than just winning battles. We'll be attacking their minds, their very way of thinking." "They attacked us without warning," the Admiral said firmly. "They killed thousands of innocent people. Sometimes the best weapon isn't the one that destroys the body, but the one that makes the enemy unable to fight." Over the next month, special operations teams worked tirelessly. They planted star shatterers on hundreds of Valkyrie ships. The aliens never noticed, too confident in their superiority to think humans could threaten them. The Valkyrie continued their attacks, destroying human ships and colonies. But now humanity had hope. They weren't just running and hiding anymore. They were preparing to strike back. In her laboratory, Sun-Mi kept working, making the devices better and stronger. She thought about Commander Do-hyun's sacrifice, about all the lives lost in the first attacks. Soon, the Valkyrie would learn that humanity wasn't helpless. They would learn that attacking Earth had been their biggest mistake. The hidden blade was ready. Now they just had to wait for the right moment to use it. And when that moment came, the stars themselves would echo with the sound of humanity's revenge. Commander Jae-ho Lee stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Vengeance, named in memory of all those lost in the first Valkyrie attacks. Next to him, Admiral Ta-1 studied the massive holographic map showing thousands of little lights. Each light was a Valkyrie ship, and hidden on many of them were humanity's secret weapons. "All teams report ready," said Major Yoon-ji, her face appearing on a screen. She looked tired but proud. Her special operations teams had worked for months, sneaking through space to plant the star shatterer devices. "Dr. Sun-Mi, are the devices calibrated?" Admiral Ta-1 asked. Sun-Mi's image appeared on another screen. She was in her control center on Mars, surrounded by computers and scientists. "All star shatterers are synchronized. We can activate them all at once, just as planned." Jae-ho looked at the map again. The Valkyrie had pushed deeper into human space, thinking they were winning the war. They didn't know that humans had turned their arrogance into a trap. "All ships, battle positions," Admiral Ta-1 ordered. The human fleet had gathered in secret, hiding behind the dark side of Jupiter. 500 ships, the largest fleet humanity had ever built, waited for the signal. "Sir," Jaiho said quietly, "the Valari are attacking the Mars colony." They watched as crystal ships appeared near Mars, their surfaces glowing with confident light patterns. The aliens had grown bold, thinking humans could only run and hide. Admiral Ta One's face hardened. They never learned to be careful. "Dr. Sunmai, start the countdown." Sun Mi's voice was clear and strong as she counted down. "Activation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. She pressed the button. Across space, thousands of Star Shatterer devices turned on at the same time. The effect was amazing. The Valari ships near Mars suddenly stopped attacking. Their light patterns went wild, flashing in confused patterns. Some ships started spinning in circles. Others crashed into each other, their crews unable to think clearly. "It's working," Sunmai shouted. "Their neural patterns are completely disrupted. All ships, attack." Admiral Taiwan commanded. The human fleet moved out from behind Jupiter like a wave of anger. This time, their weapons worked perfectly. The confused Valari couldn't coordinate their defenses or return fire properly. Jaiho watched as human ships surrounded the crystal vessels. Some Valari ships tried to escape, but they couldn't think clearly enough to use their faster-than-light drives. "Ground teams, move in," Major Yunji ordered. Special operations soldiers in advanced spacesuits flew toward the disabled Valari ships. They carried special cutting tools to break through the crystal hulls. The Valari inside couldn't fight back. They were too confused by the quantum resonance. "Sir," a sensor officer called out, "more Valari ships appearing. They're coming from the outer system." New crystal ships popped into view, their surfaces glowing with angry light patterns. These ships didn't have Star Shatterers hidden on them. "They're trying to help their friends," Jaiho said, "just as we planned." Admiral Ta One nodded. "Spring the second trap." Major Yunji's teams had also hidden Star Shatterers on asteroids and space debris all through the solar system. As the rescue ships approached, they passed near these hidden devices. "Activating second wave," Sunmai announced. More Valari ships fell into confusion. Their perfect formation broke apart as ships spun in different directions, their crews unable to think or fight. "Push them back," Admiral Ta One ordered. "Don't let any escape to warn the others." The battle lasted for hours. Human ships moved in careful patterns, disabling or destroying the confused Valari vessels. Special operations teams captured several ships, taking the crews prisoner for study. When it was over, the space around Mars was filled with broken crystal pieces that sparkled in the sunlight. Not a single Valari ship had escaped. "Status report," Admiral Ta One called out. 17 human ships damaged, 3 destroyed, Jaiho reported. "Rescue teams are collecting survivors. All Valari ships in the solar system have been captured or destroyed." "Dr. Sunmai, what about the prisoners?" Sunmi's face appeared on the screen again. "The disruption effect is temporary. They're starting to think clearly again, but they're very weak. We're learning a lot about how their minds work." "Good." The Admiral turned to Major Yunji. "Are your teams ready for the next phase?" Yunji smiled. "Yes, sir. We've identified 17 major Valari bases in nearby star systems. Each one has at least 50 Star Shatterers planted on ships and structures. And they still don't suspect anything." "No, sir. They think they're winning. Their light patterns show confidence and pride. They have no idea what's coming." Admiral Ta One looked at the map again. Red dots showed the Valari bases spread out across several star systems. Their pride will be their downfall. They thought humans would be easy to conquer, that we would behave like all the other species they've defeated. They didn't understand human nature, Jaiho said. "We don't give up. We learn, we adapt, and we remember." "Exactly." The Admiral's voice was firm. "Humanity remembers the morning star. We remember every ship they destroyed, every life they took. Now we'll teach them why that was a mistake. Over the next week, the human fleet split into 17 battle groups. Each group hid near a Valari base, waiting for the signal. The aliens continued their attacks on human colonies, never noticing the trap closing around them. Jai-Ho stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching his crew prepare for the next battle. They had trained hard for this moment. Everyone knew their role. Message from Earth Command. The communications officer announced, Operation Thunderstrike is approved. We attack in 6 hours. Jai-Ho thought about Commander Du-hyun's sacrifice, about all the lives lost when this war began. The Valari thought they were the superior species, that their crystal technology made them invincible. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity before. They had never met a species that could turn grief into determination, fear into courage, and defeat into victory. In 6 hours, every Valari base would learn this lesson at the same time. The Star Shatterers would activate, and the human fleet would strike while the enemy was confused and helpless. The storm was about to break, and it would shake the very stars. The Valari homeworld hung in space like a giant diamond, its crystal cities catching and reflecting the light of its sun. Admiral Ta-1 stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, looking at the beautiful but alien world. The human fleet had fought its way here, system by system, teaching the Valari about defeat. All Star Shatterers are in position, Captain Sunmai reported. She wasn't in her laboratory anymore. She had insisted on being here for the final battle. We can disable their entire defense network with one signal. Commander Jai-Ho checked the tactical display. Their fleet is moving to protect the planet. They've gathered every ship they have left. The Valari had learned caution too late. After losing 17 major bases in Operation Thunderstrike, they had pulled back to defend their homeworld. But even as they retreated, human special operations teams had followed, planting more Star Shatterers on their ships and stations. Message from the planet. Communications Officer Young-Soo announced. They're broadcasting in light patterns. Dr. Sunmai, can you translate? Sunmai studied the patterns of light flashing from the planet's surface. After months of studying captured Valari, she had learned to read their language. They're saying they won't surrender. They say death is better than defeat. Admiral Ta-1 nodded slowly. They expect us to destroy them. It's what they would do in our position. He turned to face his crew. But we're not them. Send the response we prepared. Young-Soo activated a special transmitter. It sent carefully designed light patterns toward the planet. The first time humans had successfully spoken to the Valari in their own language. The message was simple. We offer a different path. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then new light patterns appeared on the planet's surface. Sunmai's eyes widened as she read them. They're confused, she said. They don't understand why we haven't attacked yet. They're asking what we mean by a different path. Admiral Ta-1 smiled. Show them. Sunmai sent another message, this one containing images and data from her research. It showed young Valari learning to control their light patterns, to communicate peacefully with other species. It showed how their crystal technology could be used to help rather than harm. They're responding, Sunmai said excitedly. They want to know why we would share this knowledge with them, after what they did to us. Tell them. Admiral Ta-1 said quietly, that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our ability to learn from the past without being trapped by it. As Sunmai translated this message, Commander Jai-Ho remembered something his grandmother used to say. The strongest heart knows when not to strike. The Valari took a long time to respond. When they did, their light patterns were slower, more thoughtful. They're requesting a meeting, Sunmai translated. They want to know our terms. Admiral Ta-1 looked at the tactical display again. The human fleet could destroy the Valari homeworld. The Star Shatterers could disable their entire civilization. Victory was certain. But that wasn't why they had come all this way. Tell them we accept, he said. Major Yoonji, prepare a diplomatic team. The meeting took place in a crystal chamber in the Valari's capital city. The walls sparkled with millions of colors as the Velari High Council communicated through light patterns. Admiral Tadawan stood before them, with Sun Mai at his side to translate. "You could destroy us," the High Council's pattern said. "Why don't you?" "Because that's not who we are," Admiral Tadawan replied. "Humanity fights when we must, but we prefer to make allies rather than enemies. But we killed so many of your people. We showed no mercy." "Yes," the Admiral's voice was firm, "and we will never forget that. But remembering is not the same as seeking endless revenge." Sun Mai stepped forward. "I've learned so much about your species," she said, her words translated into light patterns. "Your crystal technology could revolutionize communication, medicine, even space travel. We could work together, learn from each other." The Velari leader's light patterns showed surprise. "You would share knowledge with us. Trust us." "Trust must be earned," Admiral Tadawan said. "But it can be earned. That's part of our terms." He laid out humanity's conditions. The Velari would withdraw from all conquered territories. They would help rebuild what they have destroyed. Young Velari would be taught to communicate peacefully with other species. And most importantly, they would join a new alliance dedicated to protecting weaker civilizations rather than conquering them. "Why these terms?" the High Council asked. "Why not simply demand our resources, our technology?" "Because true victory isn't about defeating an enemy," Admiral Tadawan explained. "It's about creating a better future." As he spoke these words, Commander Jaiho received a message from the fleet. A Velari ship had been discovered hiding in an asteroid field. But instead of attacking, it was protecting a damaged human vessel, helping its crew make repairs. "Sir," Jaiho reported with a smile, "I think some of them are already learning." The peace treaty was signed that day, marked in both human writing and Velari light patterns. As news spread across the galaxy, many couldn't believe it. The Velari had never been defeated before, and no one expected humanity's response to victory to be mercy. Back on the Vengeance, Admiral Tadawan stood with his officers, watching the Velari homeworld below. "Commander Du-hyun would be proud," Sun Mai said softly. "We didn't just win the war. We changed the way it ended." "Yes," Admiral Tadawan agreed. The Velari thought they were superior because of their advanced technology, but humanity showed them something more powerful: the ability to grow, to change, to forgive without forgetting. Major Yunjai looked at the planet thoughtfully. "Do you think they'll keep their word?" "They'll try," Sun Mai said. "I studied them long enough to know that when Velari make a promise, their very crystal nature makes them want to keep it. They just needed to learn there were better promises to make." In the years that followed, the galaxy watched in amazement as former enemies became allies. Velari crystal technology, combined with human innovation, led to incredible advances. The Star Shatterers were transformed into communication devices, helping different species understand each other better. And on Mars, in a special memorial garden, a crystal monument stood next to a stone wall carved with thousands of names. The crystal glowed with peaceful light patterns that told the story of the war, while the names remembered those who had been lost. Below both monuments, a simple message was written in all languages of the Alliance. "Let the echo of our wrath be remembered not for the destruction it brought, but for the peace it created." Commander Du-hyun's sacrifice, and the sacrifices of all those lost in the war, had led not just to victory, but to something far more rare and precious: the birth of true understanding between different species. And that perhaps was humanity's greatest victory of all.